Officer Logan Reed was cutting through the rain-soaked highway outside Astoria when his headlights sliced across the abandoned cannery yard and froze on a scene no one should ever witness. A man named Travis Cole, the vicious right hand of smuggler Derek Malone, was dragging a pregnant German shepherd across the gravel, kicking her as she fought to protect the life inside her. "Move, you worthless cargo," he snarled, raising a steel pipe above her trembling body. Rain mixed with oil beneath her paws, and in that instant, when Logan leapt from his patrol truck, rage and duty colliding, he knew something far darker was hiding behind this single act of cruelty. What happened next will break your heart and remind you why miracles still happen in this world. Before we begin, tell me, where are you watching from? Drop your country in the comments. Rain hammered the Oregon coastline with a relentless fury, turning the highway near Astoria into a slick ribbon of darkness and seawater. Deputy Logan Reed, 35, drove his patrol SUV through the storm with the familiarity of a man who had weathered far harsher nights. Logan carried the quiet grit of a former military police officer who had served 2 tours in the Middle East. His face was sharply angled, with a strong jawline that always seemed locked in place, the faint shadow of stubble accentuating his hardened features. His dark hair, trimmed short out of habit, gleamed slightly with the moisture inside the cabin, and his deep-set hazel eyes scanned the roadside with the instinct of someone who never truly stopped being a soldier. That instinct had been carved into him years ago, when he survived an IED explosion that killed 2 of his closest friends, an event that left him with a tendency to expect danger where others saw routine. Tonight, as waves crashed against the distant jetty and wind howled like something ancient, he felt that familiar coil of tension in his stomach, subtle yet insistent, as if warning him that the night demanded more from him than an ordinary patrol. His headlights sliced across the parking lot of an abandoned seafood cannery, its rusted metal siding rattling in the wind, and his breath caught when the beams illuminated a battered pickup truck pulled crookedly near a loading ramp. Beside it stood a man, tall, wiry, and mean-looking, raising his boot and slamming it into a dog chained to a corroded iron post. The man was Travis Cole, about 30, with sharp cheekbones jutting beneath unshaven stubble, a hooded jacket stuck to his thin frame, and a pair of pale blue eyes that held the cold vacancy of someone who had stopped feeling guilt long ago. Travis worked as an enforcer for Derek Malone, a smuggler who operated along the West Coast, and he carried brutality the way others carried tools, ready, casual, and thoughtless. The dog beneath him, a pregnant female German shepherd, her coat soaked and clinging to trembling ribs, let out a weak, choked yelp as she tried to twist her body to shield her belly from the blows. Oil mixed with rainwater pooled beneath her paws. Logan slammed the brakes so hard, the SUV fishtailed before catching traction, and he was out the door with his weapon drawn before the engine even settled. The rain plastered his jacket to his body, cold enough to sting. "Sheriff's office! Step away from the dog!" he shouted, voice cutting through the roar of the storm. Travis turned slowly, giving Logan a look that carried defiance, resentment, and a hint of wild calculation. Then, without a word, he bolted into the maze of shadows behind the cannery, boots splashing violently before disappearing entirely. Logan cursed under his breath but did not pursue. His attention was locked on the dog, who lay trembling, her breathing rapid and shallow. When he stepped closer, she shrank back at first, instinctual fear, but then seeing something in his posture, or perhaps hearing the gentler tone in his voice, she tried to rise. Her front paw slipped, and instead of growling or snapping the way wounded dogs often did, she inched forward until her muzzle rested against the tip of his boot. Her amber gold eyes lifted to his, swimming with fear and a plea so naked it pierced straight through his chest. Logan knelt beside her, his gloved hands steady, though his pulse hammered. As he carefully examined her neck, he found a torn collar strap, the remnants of a K9 unit emblem crudely scraped off. That discovery struck him harder than he expected. She wasn't just a stray, she had been trained, trusted, and then discarded like broken equipment. Anger flared hot beneath his ribs, mingling with a deep, protective ache. "It's okay, girl," he murmured, soft enough that the storm nearly stole the words. "I've got you now." She let out a faint whine, not from pain, but relief, and shifted her body to lean against him, still trying to shield her swollen belly, as if the pups meant more to her than her own survival. Logan gently scooped her into his arms. She was heavier than she looked, all tense muscle and trembling exhaustion, and he felt the faint thump of tiny movements in her abdomen as he carried her toward the SUV. Even soaked and shivering, she did not resist. Her trust, fragile but real, settled over him like a vow he had no intention of breaking. As he placed her carefully in the back seat and covered her with his duty jacket, he whispered the name that came to him in a rush of instinct: Liberty. A promise wrapped inside a word, a freedom she had never been given but would finally have. And as the storm raged on outside, Logan realized the night had shifted. This wasn't just a rescue, it was the beginning of something far larger, something that would pull him into darkness he thought he'd left behind. The rain eased into a steady drizzle as Logan Reed entered the Seaside Animal Clinic, its warm lights glowing against the cold night. He carried Liberty carefully, her soaked fur trembling with exhaustion, her breathing fast but slowly stabilizing. Inside, the clinic smelled of antiseptic mixed with wet fur, a strangely soothing blend against the backdrop of the storm. Behind the counter, Dr. Emily Carter looked up from paperwork. Emily was 30, petite yet strong, with auburn hair tied back, though loose strands framed a face marked by compassion and quiet resilience. Her green eyes widened when she saw Liberty's condition, and with practiced urgency, she guided Logan to the exam table. Logan set Liberty down gently. The dog's ribs rose and fell unevenly, her swollen belly tense, but she made no attempt to bite or resist. Emily approached slowly, offering her hand for Liberty to sniff. Then she gave a simple canine command gesture, palm down, sweeping to the floor. Despite her injuries, Liberty obeyed instantly, lowering her body. Emily exchanged a knowing look with Logan. "She's trained," she murmured. Emily scanned Liberty's neck with a microchip reader. A beep sounded and numbers flashed. Her face tightened. "She's registered to a Phoenix K9 program. Shut down last year. Several dogs went missing." Logan's jaw hardened. He told Emily about Travis, the beating, the chain, the way Liberty had crawled toward him instead of away. Emily continued her exam, noticing faint white powder clinging to Liberty's coat. "She's been exposed to narcotics," she said. "Not accidental, forced exposure." Logan felt anger boiling beneath his ribs, tempered by the ache of seeing Liberty's quiet trust. Suddenly, a faint tap rattled the front window. Liberty's ears shot up. She let out a low, warning growl. Emily paused. Logan stepped closer to the window, but outside only darkness and rain stared back. Still, Liberty's gaze stayed fixed on the parking lot, her muscles rigid. "She senses something," Logan whispered. "Someone was there." Emily didn't argue. She knew trained dogs didn't give false warnings. Finishing the bandages, she exhaled. "This isn't just abuse," she said. "This is organized." Logan nodded grimly. "I'm calling someone." He dialed Sarah Whitfield, a federal investigator in Seattle. Sarah was in her early 40s, tall and lean with silver blonde hair and sharp blue-gray eyes that rarely softened. Her pale skin and angular features gave her an air of severe elegance, but beneath it lived a relentless purpose, shaped by losing her brother to an overdose. She answered with crisp alertness. After hearing Logan's account, she said, "I'll drive down tomorrow. Keep the dog safe. Malone's men don't leave loose ends." Logan hung up as Emily finished cleaning Liberty's wounds. The German Shepherd rested her head, eyelids heavy. Emily stepped back. "She needs rest," she said, "but not here. If someone followed—" "I know," Logan said. "I'll take her to the Cannon Beach Station kennels." He lifted Liberty again, her muzzle pressing weakly against his chest. As they exited into the drizzle, neither of them noticed a car parked at the far corner of the lot, headlights off. Only Liberty saw it, her eyes narrowing as the vehicle rolled silently away into the night. Thunder rolled across the coastal hills like a growling beast as a summer storm gathered strength over Cannon Beach, turning the small police station into a flickering silhouette against the restless sky. The change in weather had arrived abruptly, shifting from gentle rain to violent winds and sudden bursts of lightning that illuminated the tall pines surrounding the station. Inside the dimly lit kennels behind the building, Liberty lay curled on a dry blanket, her swollen belly rising and falling in uneven breaths. Each time thunder cracked, she whimpered softly, then pressed her muzzle through the bars to nudge Logan Reed's hand whenever he checked on her, as if trying to comfort him even while fear rippled through her body. Logan, still carrying the weariness of sleepless nights, found himself strangely anchored by that small act of trust. Despite everything Liberty had endured, she still tried to protect others. It reminded him of men he had served with overseas, men who fought hardest when they had the least left to give. In the main office of the station, Logan stood with Emily Carter and Special Agent Sarah Whitfield. The three of them gathered before a large pinboard. It was cluttered with maps stretching from Oregon to Washington, photographs of warehouses, shipping containers, and port terminals, and printed data pulled from the memory card found in Travis's truck. Emily, still in her clinic scrubs, had tied her auburn hair into a higher, tighter knot than usual, a sign she was deep in thought. Sarah, tall and sharp-boned with her silver blonde hair pulled back in a severe twist, studied the board with narrow, calculating eyes. Her angular face had a kind of haunted beauty, every line a reminder of cases that had cost her dearly over the years. Tonight she wore a dark field jacket and stood with her arms folded tightly across her chest, as if bracing against both the storm outside and the storm she expected to unfold from the evidence on the board. They had identified nearly a dozen locations linked to Derek Malone, each warehouse strategically placed between Seattle and Tacoma ports. Sarah traced a gloved finger along a route connecting several of the locations, her voice low but firm. "He's moving product through these sites. Dogs that disappear, narcotics that appear, weapons that vanish from inventory." Logan nodded, jaw tight. "This one," Emily said quietly, tapping a printed file, "mentions a test run scheduled around the same time Liberty was taken." Her voice wavered only slightly. She had bonded quickly with the German Shepherd, and the idea that Liberty had been used in such a way made her chest tighten with anger. Just as she clicked open a digital log labeled Test Run 07 ARX, a burst of thunder shook the building and the lights flickered violently. Then half the station went dark. Emily jerked back from the keyboard. Sarah's hand went instinctively to the holster beneath her jacket. For a moment, the only sound was the rising wind and the distant crash of waves beyond the tree line. Then, after a sputter, the backup generator hummed to life, bringing a faint, unstable glow to the hallway lights. But the relief was short-lived. Logan's radio crackled with static. A strange humming vibration echoed through the rear lot, then the muffled thud of vehicle doors slamming shut. Sarah moved to the window, peering into the storm-lashed dark. A white van rolled into view, its headlights dimmed, windshield streaked with rain and mud. The van stopped near the back entrance. The side door slid open. "Move!" Sarah barked, but the warning came a heartbeat too late. A metal canister clattered through the rear doorway, bouncing across the concrete floor. Thick smoke exploded into the corridor. Logan coughed, eyes burning. "Smoke grenade!" Emily grabbed a cloth and covered her mouth instinctively. Another canister rolled in, and gunfire cracked through the main entrance, bullets shattering glass and peppering the filing cabinets. Malone's men weren't guessing. They were here for Liberty. Logan's thoughts snapped into sharp clarity. Emily, Liberty's in the kennels. They dropped low and crawled through the smoke-filled hallway toward the back. Liberty barked once, a sharp, pained sound, then another. Emily's heart hammered as they reached the kennel room. The moment she opened the door, Liberty staggered toward her, whining desperately. Emily's breath hitched. Logan, she's in labor. The realization cut through the chaos like lightning. Gunfire cracked again from the parking lot. Somewhere, metal groaned as someone tried forcing their way inside. Sarah's voice burst through the radio, shouting orders to the young officer on duty. Get her into the supply closet, Logan said, pointing to a small room at the back, half filled with tools, crates, and blankets. It wasn't ideal, far from it, but it was safer than the open kennel aisle. Emily supported Liberty's body while Logan cleared a space on the floor. The dog's breaths came in painful spasms, her muscles quivering under the strain of early labor. Outside, another officer sprinted into the hall. Officer Miguel Harper, 24, broad-shouldered with curly dark hair plastered to his forehead by sweat. Miguel was earnest, brave, and sometimes too impulsive for his own good. Traits shaped by growing up with a father who'd been wrongly imprisoned and later exonerated. That history made Miguel fight fiercely for justice, sometimes recklessly. Deputy, they're circling the station. 3 armed, maybe 4, he shouted. Then he spotted Liberty. Damn, she picked a hell of a night. Before Logan could answer, a shot rang out from the side doorway. Miguel returned fire, the muzzle flash lighting his worried face. Shouts echoed outside, followed by the screech of retreating footsteps. Meanwhile, Liberty collapsed onto the makeshift bedding, her body tightening with each contraction. Emily knelt beside her, voice trembling but steady enough to comfort. Good girl, just breathe. We're here. Logan crouched opposite her, shielding both Emily and Liberty, as another explosion of thunder rattled the rafters. Minutes stretched painfully long. One pup emerged, slick and tiny, weakly squirming. Emily cleared its airway, wrapped it gently, and pushed it toward Liberty. The mother nudged the pup protectively, even as another contraction seized her body. 2 more puppies followed, each arrival a small miracle inside a building filling with smoke and tension. By the time the last shot outside faded and Malone's men fled into the storm, the pups were nestled against Liberty's side, mewling faintly. Liberty, exhausted, still tried to raise her head each time thunder boomed, as if to shield her newborns from a world that had already hurt her too many times. And in that fragile moment, Logan understood. Whatever war Malone was running, whatever darkness lay ahead, it now involved 3 more lives, depending on them to stand their ground. The morning after the chaotic assault on the Cannon Beach station arrived with an eerie quiet, as if the storm itself had exhausted every ounce of rage it carried. Clouds still hung low over the Pacific, but the air was calmer, cool, and rinsed clean by the night's violence. Inside the station, Logan Reed felt the echo of every gunshot in his bones, yet the soft squeaks of Liberty's newborn pups grounded him, reminding him what they had fought to protect. Sarah Whitfield made the decision before sunrise. We moved them, she said firmly, her silver blonde hair still damp from washing away the smoke of the night before. Her voice carried that particular steel, forged from years of watching criminals slip through cracks that shouldn't exist. Cannon Beach isn't safe anymore. Malone knows where to hit us. Emily agreed. Her face was pale, freckles standing out sharper against her tired skin. She hadn't slept, not with the memory of delivering 3 fragile lives under gunfire still vivid behind her eyes. Her hands were steady, though, as she packed medical supplies and wrapped the pups in soft towels. Liberty stood weakly beside her, ribs showing under her damp fur, but her gaze remained alert, watchful, protective. The safest place Sarah could think of was a working dog rescue farm outside Spokane, Washington, owned by Tommy Beck, a former search and rescue trainer in his early 40s. Tommy was tall and rangy, with sun-cracked skin, a fading beard, and kind eyes hardened only by the loss of a partner dog years earlier in an avalanche mission. That tragedy had changed him. It made him vow to dedicate his life to saving dogs others had thrown away. When Logan and Emily arrived with Liberty and her pups, Tommy greeted them in a flannel shirt and worn boots, wiping grease from his hands. "Poor girl," he murmured, kneeling slowly so as not to startle her. "She's seen too much, but she's still standing. That counts for something." His calmness worked instantly. Liberty lowered herself onto the straw bed prepared for her and let Tommy check the pups, a small but powerful sign of trust. The rescue farm sat on 10 acres of fenced fields, tall fir trees, and sunlight that filtered through wide barn doors. For the first time in years, Liberty wasn't surrounded by metal bars or shouting voices. She watched the breeze move through the grass, listened to dogs bark in the distance, not in fear, but in play. Whenever child volunteers wandered in, Liberty didn't bark aggressively. Instead, she lifted her head but stayed down, allowing their small hands to pet her puppies. She never fully relaxed, always glancing toward the doorway, but her gentleness showed another layer of who she was, a protector who judged everything by intent, not noise or fear. Emily visited daily, driving back and forth between the coast and the farm to monitor Liberty's recovery. Each day she saw something new, Liberty guiding her pups, nudging them closer when they wandered too far, or positioning her body between strangers and her litter. That watchfulness wasn't aggression, it was devotion. But peace couldn't last forever. While Emily oversaw Liberty's healing, Logan and Sarah worked through the files salvaged from Travis's truck and the blown-out station. One piece of luck came from a highway camera near Tacoma that had scanned a van linked to Malone's network. Tracing that lead, they uncovered a storage facility operating under a shell corporation registered to a non-existent CEO. "Classic Malone," Sarah muttered as she and Logan drove north in a gray, unmarked SUV. She sat with rigid posture, her long limbs folded neatly, fingers drumming against her knee. Years in federal investigations had carved her into a machine built for pursuit. No wasted movements, no unnecessary words. But Logan saw a flicker in her eyes, anger at yet another criminal who believed he could operate in plain sight without consequence. They reached Tacoma after dusk. Fog rolled across the port, clinging to the pilings and steel structures like a second skin. Misty rain beaded on their jackets as they waited for backup units from Washington's State Task Force. The abandoned warehouse smelled of diesel and char. Logan's hand tightened on his flashlight the moment they stepped inside. Rows of cages stood empty, doors hanging open. Chains lay scattered across the concrete floor. A long evaluation board titled Endurance, Speed, Response listed incomplete notes for each dog. On the far wall, a patch of paint had been scraped away, leaving the outline of a logo unmistakably belonging to a California K-9 unit. "Malone stripped this place clean," Logan said, jaw tightening, "and torched it right after." A slow drip echoed from the ceiling where sprinklers had partially extinguished a fire. In the destroyed office, Sarah found a partially burned hard drive under a loose metal plate. Her eyes sharpened the instant she saw it. "He forgot this." She slipped it into a sealed evidence bag. "If this boots up, it'll map the entire smuggling line." They searched deeper until they found what they needed, a hidden ledger encoded with shipment dates, route numbers, and a list of missing K-9s. Dogs taken from California, Arizona, and Oregon, all replaced with blank entries next to Malone's coded identifiers. Sarah exhaled slowly. "We're close. So close." She leaned against a charred crate, staring into the fog that filtered through the busted wall panels. "To end this, we need him in the open. No shadows, no intermediaries." Logan nodded. "Then we catch him during a major run." Sarah's eyes narrowed with purpose. "Exactly. We make him think he's untouchable." The trap was forming, somewhere between Tacoma's foggy docks and the northern wilderness where Malone planned his biggest shipment yet. Wind swept across the abandoned piers of South Seattle in long, cold gusts that carried the smell of rusted steel and old tides. The sky hung low and heavy with rain, turning the towering cranes and stacked containers into shadowy silhouettes against the gray waterfront. It was the kind of day where danger hid easily between the lines of mist and metal, a fitting final chapter for a criminal network built on silence and stolen lives. Emily Carter had driven into the city early that morning with the smallest of Liberty's pups, a fragile little boy with a white patch on his chest. He needed a cardiac scan, something only a specialized veterinary hospital in Seattle could provide. Emily, tired but hopeful, had been humming softly to the pup when she disappeared. Her last phone ping came from an industrial service road cutting toward Pier 47, a part of the port long abandoned except for illegal night operations. Moments later, traffic cameras caught her car boxed in by a dark SUV, its plates covered, its windows tinted. Then nothing. Logan felt cold settle into his chest when the video call came. The screen flickered, then sharpened into the sneering face of Derek Malone. Early 40s, thick neck, weathered skin like someone carved from bad decisions and sleepless nights. His black beard was trimmed neatly, but his eyes held no control, just rage and a lifetime of taking what he wanted. Behind him, Emily knelt with her arms zip-tied, hair disheveled, cheeks streaked with seawater and fear. The tiny puppy whimpered in a cage at her feet. "You want her back," Derek said, lifting his pistol lazily. "Then you bring me Liberty and the other pups. Tonight, at the pier." Then the screen went dark. Sarah Whitfield and Logan moved like two halves of the same instinct. Sarah immediately called in tactical support from the Seattle field office. SWAT snipers, tactical medics, surveillance drones, every resource she trusted. Her composure was absolute, but Logan saw the fury beneath it. She hated when criminals turned animals and women into bargaining chips. Her long frame and sharp posture radiated precision as she briefed the team, her pale skin marked by a scar along her jaw, earned years ago during a raid gone wrong in Nevada. That old failure shaped her, made her demand perfection from every operation since. The plan was simple on paper. Logan would walk onto the pier carrying a crate Derek assumed held Liberty. Snipers would cover every approach. Tactical units would hide between the rows of shipping containers. Sarah would coordinate from a surveillance perch above the loading bay. But they didn't know that Liberty herself, sensing one pup missing and Emily absent, had snapped her kennel latch at the Spokane farm hours earlier. Her nose, a map built from instinct and memory, guided her across fields, roads, gravel lots, and container yards, all the way toward the scent of Emily's fear and her puppy's heartbeat. Rain slicked her fur and cuts along her pads bled on the concrete, but she kept going, driven by a loyalty no human could teach. The sun had dipped behind the skyline when Logan stepped onto Pier 47. The rain turned the wooden planks treacherous beneath his boots. He carried an empty crate, just Liberty's old vest inside, to give Malone a convincing scent. Derek emerged from behind a stack of containers, one hand gripping the puppy's cage, the other pressing a pistol to Emily's ribs. Two armed men flanked him, rough-looking, tattoos curling up their necks, eyes darting erratically. "Nice and slow, Reed," Derek taunted. "You don't get to be a hero." Logan placed the crate down, raising his hand slightly. Emily's eyes flicked toward him, pleading, terrified, but still fighting. Sarah whispered through his earpiece, "Snipers in position. Wait, wait." Then Derek tightened his grip on the trigger. At that exact heartbeat, a blur of tan and black shot out from the side ramp. Liberty. She tore across the slick boards like lightning, her paws skidding but her momentum unstoppable. She slammed into Derek's arm just as he fired. The bullet shrieked past Emily and shattered a concrete pillar. Derek screamed as the gun flew from his hand and tumbled off the pier into the black water below. Chaos erupted. Derek's men opened fire blindly. Sarah's snipers responded instantly, controlled precise shots that disarmed without killing. Logan dove toward Emily, shielding her with his body as splinters burst from the pier around them. The puppy cried out in the cage but remained unharmed. Liberty, though bleeding from the pads of her feet, stood between the shooters and the people she loved. Her growl was deep and primal, a final warning drawn from every trauma she'd survived. Derek lunged for her, but Logan tackled him hard, forcing him onto the wet boards. Handcuffs clicked around the trafficker's wrists before he could regain breath or balance. Within minutes, the pier fell silent except for the sound of distant sirens and rain hitting the planks. Emily sobbed as she clutched the white-chested pup to her chest. Logan's hands shook slightly as he helped her stand. Liberty limped forward and pressed her head into Emily's leg, tail trembling but wagging faintly. Derek Malone's empire fell that night, crushed by video evidence, seized hard drives, witness testimony, and the survivors he underestimated. The darkness he built at the ports and warehouses unraveled, one confession at a time, until it collapsed under its own corruption. Months later, the old warehouse outside Seattle was transformed into the Seattle Coast Canine Rescue and Training Center. The city gathered for the grand opening, police officers, former canine handlers, families who had lost service dogs, and children clutching handmade signs. Mayor Annette Brooks, a warm woman in her 50s with silver curls and deep-set, compassionate eyes, stood at the podium and thanked Liberty by name. Emily and Logan stood beside the German Shepherd, now healthy, her coat glossy under the lights. Her 3 pups played at her feet, tumbling over each other while volunteers laughed. A local pastor gave a short blessing, reminding everyone that even in the dirtiest corners of the harbor, light could break through. That mercy wasn't weakness, but courage, and that protecting the vulnerable, human or animal, was one of the purest forms of grace. As the ribbon was cut and applause filled the air, Liberty lifted her head. For the first time in years, she wasn't afraid. She was home. Just like the warm golden hue in Liberty's fur, a color that shone even on the grayest docks of Seattle, God often speaks to us through small, gentle signs. Tiny sparks of brightness meant to guide us back when the shadows feel overwhelming. In everyday life, each of us carries our own Seattle pier, a place of fear, exhaustion, or heartbreak, where we feel alone against the storm. But just as Liberty kept moving toward the people she loved, we too can trust that God's light will break through. In a kind word, a helping hand, a moment of unexpected kindness, or even a single ray of sunlight after a long night. This story is a reminder to stand with the vulnerable, to protect what is fragile, and to believe that compassion, no matter how small, can rewrite the fate of a life. May Liberty's courage inspire you to choose light over fear and hope over despair. If this story touched your heart, please share it, so its warmth can reach someone who needs it. Leave a comment below. Tell us where you're watching from and what part moved you most. And don't forget to subscribe to join more stories of rescue, courage, and grace. May God's blessing cover you and your family, just as He watched over Liberty and those who fought for her. If you feel the power of this story, type Amen in the comments. God bless you.